this is a good time to watch a lot of slasher movies, and I haven't been doing my due diligence of letting you guys know about more classic slasher movies, which, by the way, this reminded me of 80 slasher movies, and I'm not talking about the big three because everyone tries to copy Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. Not those. I'm talking about the more lesser known but still fun slasher movies, stuff like Fatal Games, Graduation, Happy Birthday to Me, Intruder, The Mutilator. This was giving me a little bit the Mutilator vibe. Hey, Lashy Kids and Driving Mutants, I'm Lady Shasha, Mistress of the Snark, and I just watched Clown in a Cornfield. I like how this movie starts off. It very much follows the pattern of your classic 80s slasher horror movie. The first two kills happen within the first few minutes of this movie, and I love that for us. It also takes place, well, partially in 1991 before it jumps to the current day, and I like that time jump as well. Our main family in this features a father and a daughter, and they are driving cross country to their new home as the mother has recently passed away, having succumbed to her battle with cancer. I like the opening scene that introduces us to these two characters because the dad is listening to Eric B. and Rakim, which is so Gen X. And then I was reminded how old I was when the daughter said, "You know how in the 80s you looked at things from the 1940s? Right now, we are the same distance from the 80s as you were in the 80s from the 1940s." And I was just like, wow. So when we play our music from the 80s, does it sound like a big band music to you? Because that's when I think of the 40s, I think of big band music, and I just, hmm, wow, I feel so old. Uh, Shout out to Mike Bracken, Horror Geek. Anyways, they moved to Kettle Springs, which I guess is meant to be kind of Midwesternish because they say they're from the East Coast, and the people in the town are like, "Oh, well, that's far away." So I can only imagine it's somewhere in the Midwest. Also, the cornfields. Although we do have cornfields in Connecticut, because I was just telling my sister that there was a shortcut from my high school to home if you're walking home from school, and the shortcut was through a cornfield. And she was like, "We would never." Her generation, which is a little bit after mine, because she's exennial, she was like, "We would never have cut through a cornfield." And that just seems so ordinary to me to cut through the cornfield. The first person she meets in town is her neighbor. Well, at least I assumed he was a neighbor, or at least he lived close. His name is Rust, and he's giving like the stereotype of old country guy. They call him a redneck several times, but I mean, it's just giving a person from the country anyway. And he walks her to school and tells her about the town and about the titular clown, which was a mascot. I'm looking at my notes for the Bay Pen syrup clown. I would have never remembered that if I didn't take a note of it. When she goes to school, they have this teacher that immediately gives you stick up the ass type of instructor, and at first you don't know why he's like this. But one little girl, well, we think it's one little girl, but it's a group of kids, troll the hell out of their teacher, and he does not have the best reaction to it. So they all end up in detention. And Quinn, that's the new girl that just moved there with her dad, she's in detention with them, and then they tell her more about the town's history. And one of the little boys in the class, his grandfather started the Bay Pen corn syrup company, and that there was a fire also that took the company out. Basically, they took the legend of the Bay Pen clown and turned it into a serial killer series for their YouTube channel. So they pull pranks all the time doing these serial killer stunts, and people kind of know them as the bad kids who pull serial killer pranks. Anyways, Quinn takes a liking to the young man whose was it grandfather? He said grandfather, but it felt like it should have been great grandfather. Started the whole Bay Pen corn syrup clown thing, and she's there for like 3 days. She's already making out with, or trying to make out with him, because she's very aggressive. Of course, her dad finds out and he's like, well, you're not going to see that boy again. And she does that whole, that what I call the Hollywood thing of cursing your parent out and then running to your room and slamming the door, which would never happen in my house because my mother doesn't play that. Like, she would have caught me by my ponytail. I probably could have got away with that with my father because he's more of a, if you have parents that are good cop, bad cop, my father's definitely the good cop. My mother's the bad cop with that situation. But yeah, at least for me, I only see it in movies or TV shows where the teenager does this and then runs to the room and slams the door as if their parent is not going to bust the door open and continue that conversation. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's a cultural thing. But I digress. By the way, I'm giving you a recap, but it's not a scene by scene because you got to leave something for people to watch in case they happen to be watching a spoiler review, even though they haven't seen the movie. So they invite her to a party inside of a barn and they pull a prank on her and record it. You see it if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the prank. But then later that night, of course, this is shown in the trailer too. She's looking at the footage that they uploaded to YouTube and she sees the real clown in the background. And this alerts her to, hey, there's something else going on here. And she shows them as well, but they don't take it super seriously. There's also a side plot about a Founders Day and the parade that goes along with the Founders Day. I wasn't super interested in that part of the story, although it did add an element of something new to the story. I would say this movie had some really fun elements. There were some comedic moments that I really, really enjoyed. I was surprised. I was really surprised by the writing because I've been let down so much by recent slasher movies. If you've seen my shorter videos that I've posted on TikTok, you know how I felt about In a Boring Nature. You know how I felt. I don't think I did a Hard Eyes one because I was so disappointed. Not by the slashing and the gore, but by the comedy. I felt like the comedy didn't land for me in Hard Eyes, although I really did enjoy the gore and the kills. I thought those were pretty good. And it felt a little derivative of Scream. And Scream itself is derivative of other slasher movies, so there's that. But this had a sense of comedy that I would compare to maybe like an Eli Roth type horror movie, or going further back, John Landis. Yeah, when I think of horror movies where the comedy hit, I'm thinking of John Landis. And it's Stuart Gordon that did Reanimator. Let's check. Brian Usna presents HP Lovecast Reanimator starring Bruce Abbott, Barbara Crampton, Jeffrey Combs, and Stuart Gordon. I knew his name was somewhere in there. He did the screenplay. Okay, so I'm not completely off base. Directed by Stuart Gordon. Okay. See, I was tripping. See, when you second guess yourself, you think, oh, do I know what I know? Okay, I know what I know. Oh, there's a note up here. Let me see. Cat dead, details later. Anyway, that's a person who also knows how to interject comedy into the horror. So you get my point. I felt like this writer-director had a similar feel to how they interjected comedy into the horror, and I really enjoyed that. Definitely felt like this paid homage to several horror classics. One of them, people might not notice, but maybe it's just a weird thing with me. At one point, Quinn hurts her leg and she starts running, and the way that she was hop running was almost identical to Homegirl in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I didn't know whether that was just a coincidence or whether that was meant to be, because that's what it gave me. The unexpected turn is the reason why. Why is the killer clown killing? I'll tell you in a moment. Let me wrap this up for those of you who have not seen the film and they're watching the spoiler review for whatever reason. Go check out the film. It's a lot of fun. I think it's a great kickoff to what I'm calling, again, Summer of Slashers, because I'm going to get into more, because we got Final Destination coming out, and I do consider that a slasher movie, even though the slasher is Death's Design. Still a slasher movie in my opinion. Supernatural slasher. Either way, we're doing a Summer of Slashers because I just feel like it. This is a good time to watch a lot of slasher movies, and I haven't been doing my due diligence of letting you guys know about more classic slasher movies, which, by the way, this reminded me of 80s slasher movies, and I'm not talking about the big three because everyone tries to copy Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and Halloween. Not those. I'm talking about the more lesser known but still fun slasher movies. Stuff like Fatal Games, Graduation, Happy Birthday to Me, Intruder, The Mutilator. This was giving me a little bit the Mutilator vibe. I will get more into that when I spoil the ending. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, go see it. I feel like it's going to do really well when it does hit streaming. I think it's going to really pop off when it hits streaming. But I enjoyed it, and I feel like this movie's kind of gonna maybe fly under the radar. And it's just a really fun movie. This is the last time I had fun watching a slash movie like this would be Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. That was a lot of fun. I rewatched that, and this has a lot of rewatchability to it. So there's that. Okay, let's get into the spoiler for the ending. Who is the killer clown? Why is he killing? How about it's not just one? And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, is it going to be like Scream? No, it's not like Scream because it's not just two either. It's like a dozen of these killer clowns. And it's like all of the town's older people. Well, when I say older people, some of them are my age. What was I saying? Yes, the town adults. Why do they want to do this? I did notice something that could be a clue of why the town's adults were doing this, even though they did have a little bit of the mayor had a little bit of their villain speech of why I did it all type of speech, which, I kind of don't like. Anyways, the big clue that I noticed is the adults all speak with one accent, but the teenagers that are targeted all speak with a different accent. To me, that indicates that the teenagers that they're targeting have all moved to town. But then I thought that theory doesn't make sense because one of the teens targeted is the son of the mayor, who's also one of the killer clowns. Why is he targeting his own son? And also, why did he frame his own son? Because there's a whole underlying story about how his sister passed away in the fire, and they blame him for the fire until they found out that it was an electrical issue, or at least it was written up as such, until he finds out that his father actually set the fire to try to claim the insurance money off the factory because they were about to close anyways. So why target your own son? Although the father never says it, it is implied that he is disowning his son because his son happens to be gay. Big reveal. I did actually like that side of the story because I didn't expect it, and I thought that his character was done in such a cool way where him being gay is really secondary to his character, except for when the reveal comes about his father and the other evil adults. Other than that, his character and also the love story in the background. There's also a love story in the background that was not annoying. Typically, I think love stories in horror movies can be annoying, but I think it's because of the way they're written. Because I noticed I didn't mind it in American Werewolf in London. Again, John Landis. So there is a way you could do it without it being aggravating or cringy, and I think they did that really well in this. Also, the setup for who the adults are, they gave these little tells when you I'm imagining when you rewatch this, you'll know immediately who these people are because each person had a little detail tell that they did. From the school teacher that I said had to stick up his ass. There's a waitress that she's very friendly to the adults, but she's not friendly to the teenagers. There's somebody else. The sheriff, he was a dick. And the shopkeeper at the general store. I almost want to call it a convenience store, but it gives more general store than convenience store. They all have these behaviors that let you know that something's going on beneath the surface. I also like what the character Cole said about the older generation. It was very, very poignant, and I completely agree. He said something to the effect of, you guys would rather burn everything down than to accept change. And I think that is so, so true, especially right now. And I'm seeing too much of not just my generation, but also people a little bit older than me blaming the younger generation for things. And it really gets under my skin because I'm like, do you have collective amnesia, especially for Gen X? I get it with boomers. They came through a different time where they had kind of the best setup. Like they had the best scholarships. They had colleges you could go to school for $300 a semester. Like, I'm not even trying to hear what a boomer is talking about as far as what the youth are dealing with today, because you guys came through at a totally, totally different time period. But when I see someone in my generation, Gen X, act like they don't understand what the youth is going through, when literally if you were Gen X and you came out of high school in the 90s or college in the 90s, you came out during a recession, you know how difficult it is. You know how hard it was just to get a regular job, how many applications. I remember me and my cousin were comparing back when we were in our 20s, how we had put in 80 applications to try to get a job, just to get a call back. But somehow Gen X has amnesia about this.
Most Gen Xers are in school during the crash. So at first, they think like, so what?
I vividly remember that day because all these classmates of mine in college were huddled around the TV. And I was like, what's going on? You know, like full on Keanu Reeves, like, what's up? Stock market's crashing. Well, that's fine. I'm a creative. Who cares? I'm going to be a writer. It turned out that had an impact on the job market. It turned out there weren't as many jobs.
Recession is already here.
General Motors and Ford are laying off almost 25,000 workers.
Coming out of college with a degree doesn't matter. No one can find work.
I applied for every single opening in my field, but there's nothing.
Times are hard. You just gonna have to swallow your pride.
For Gen Xers, the new reality sees the birth of McJobs and the death of traditional careers.
White-collar workers are hit the hardest this time.
The stereotype of the slacker is born.
The whole idea of us being pegged as slackers, I think, came out of the fact that we couldn't get jobs.
People started looking at different ways that they could do things precisely because those traditional paths weren't there anymore.
That's kind of what Gen X was. A bunch of us kind of going like, well, maybe there's like a back door into this bitch.
All sorts of independent film, independent music, alternative ways of working. That doesn't make you a slacker. It actually makes you the opposite.
And then also with the whole calling people lazy. You don't remember that they had articles with pictures of us on the cover, and it said slackers. They don't work hard. They don't dress right for work. They want to wear sneakers to work. They want mental health days. What is that? Do you remember they wrote those articles about us? You don't remember that? Because it's giving. You don't remember that when I see people my age get online and say, oh, these young people, they're so lazy. No. Anyways, you guys didn't click on this video to hear about generational conflict. You came here to hear about a slasher movie. As a person who grew up watching slasher movies I keep bringing up the 80s, not because it's the only time there's slasher movies. I don't want people to get it twisted. There's great slasher movies from the 60s, the 70s, the 90s. I'm just saying this movie felt so 80s and how the storyline developed. It felt like watching something like Prom Night. Like it gave me those type of vibes. Completely original story, which I'm hearing is from a book, but like I said, I really, really enjoy this. I did find out that the director of this movie was born in 1972, and I like that this movie feels like a love letter from one Gen Xer to Gen Z, and I enjoy that. It's a voice that needs to be heard, because I feel like the dissenting voices that are speaking down on a younger generation are drowning out those of us that are trying to support, encourage, and watch you guys, do your damn thing. And I like that message of this movie. I'd be remiss and I wouldn't be myself if I didn't talk to you about the kills. Like I said in my shorter review on TikTok, the first kill I thought was just okay. But then I thought, oh, well, it's because you can see it from the distance and because they want to build up to something. So what I definitely respect is how the kills got progressively gorier, and more gory. And I enjoyed that. It looked like they used practical effects for what they did for most of it. I can't say I have any complaints about the kills. I really thought that they nailed it. Hey, give me a good decapitation and I'm happy. They gave me a good decapitation. They gave, the second one I was going to say multiple decapitations, but the second one was more of a complete and total destruction of someone's head, more so than even a decapitation. I really like that.
It's disgusting. Ugh. I love it.
The blood looked good, right color, right consistency. Maybe a little, it could be a little on the watery side, but there was so much of it. I mean, I can't complain. I enjoy that. Is there anything else I could say about this movie? The ending seemed like maybe they were trying to go for a little bit of sequel bait, but I can't see how the story can continue. Since it's from a book that I have not read, maybe there's some things that I don't know about that. I think this review has been long enough. I've pictured a guy with the wrap it up B box.
Yo, the sign is real simple, B. It says wrap it up. Wrap that shit up, B.
I had a good time, but like I always say, don't take my word for it. Watch it for yourself. Just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it. And just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. Here comes the thunder. Let's wait till the thunder stops. Oh my God, longest thunder ever. Until next time, don't take any wooden nickels.
Oh.